This is Gary Atensi with CNTV, and today we're in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We are here with the Driver Safety Consultants, Inc. Since 2000, they have been providing exceptional driving instruction for teens and adults here in Colorado Springs, Woodland Park, and the surrounding areas. I'm here with the founder, CEO, president. Why don't we begin a little bit about yourself? Began in 2000 with this company here, but was all the way back 1973 when you began this industry, where the journey would take you. Your expertise basically helped you move up to senior instructor and well beyond. It was in 1999 that expertise turned into a passion and a lifelong mission. Share with us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And most people don't think I'm that old, but I started in my early 20s in this industry. This is not what I wanted to do in my life. It was just by happenstance. And I was lucky enough to be interviewed amongst 50 other candidates for the largest school in New York on Long Island. And they chose three of us, and I happened to be one of the three. And I moved my way up the ranks because I always loved to drive, but I thought I knew everything as a young puppy dog. I realized that I really didn't know that much about defensive tactics and driving until I became involved as a professional. And then I really had to learn. Ultimately, I was training instructors. I was a Department of Motor Vehicle classroom trainer, certified by New York State, and the rest is kind of history. I ultimately decided to move. My dad was a police officer. I moved to Phoenix, Arizona to actually get onto the police department. And while I was there, they had hiring holds on the staff for the police in Tucson, and there was only 5 schools in that state. I got a reference letter from my prior boss, and I got a job with Sears Arizona School of Driving as a area supervisor, and then became involved in my own school. I opened up Southwestern School of Driving shortly after working for Sears with contracts from the Department of Rehabilitation. And then ultimately as a clinical evaluator, again by happenstance, I got a contract with Phoenix Baptist Hospital to evaluate patients for the hospital, stroke patients, brain injuries. I started to specialize in adaptive equipment for people to become independent again after suffering an illness or an injury. And then I got out of the industry completely. I became a professional wine consultant, which is such a closely related. Transferred to San Diego, California with that position, and was involved with a woman whose daughter was of driving age and was looking for a driving school, happened across an ad in the newspaper for a driving evaluator at Sharp Memorial Hospital, decided to get back into it again. I was fortunate enough to have several different clients, including Jan Michael Vincent, former actor, Patty Schroeder. John Schroeder was a ABC commentator. His daughter became a quadriplegic in a swimming accident. And after seeing a lot of destruction, I decided I need to get out, and which I did. And eventually, in 1999, my daughter Melissa was involved in a fatal car crash caused by a teenage driver. I'd moved out here to be close to her and my grandsons, Tyler and TJ. And that kind of ignited the passion again to get back involved and help parents avoid getting in a situation where they lose their child in a crash. And so my goal now is to save lives.
Absolutely fascinating story, heartbreaking yet inspiring at the same time. I imagine we as drivers, we all jump in our car every day. We have thoughts of our destination, where we're going, but really no thoughts of that of safety or anything like that. Do you find that to be the case between teens and adults? It really doesn't matter.
Well, it's a never-ending cycle. The problem is we undertrain most of our drivers in this country. Most of them don't learn how to drive except through trial and error after they get a license. And then they unfortunately pass along the lack of skills to their children. The majority of kids in this country are trained by their parents. We don't have high school driver education programs in a lot of the states anymore, and that's another story in and of itself. And frankly, the teens that we deal with, we give them a leg up. The first-year crash rate for most new drivers, regardless of their age, believe it or not, is 58%. They'll get into a police-reported crash within the first 12 months of their driving career after licensing. Yeah. In the first 3 years, it's actually as high as 80%. So consequently, if we can kind of stem the tide in that first year by offering them a professional training program, and a cost-effective one at that, then certainly we can change the odds from over 50% to under 50% quite quickly, and that's what we do.
Interesting. Exceptional driving is what you provide, and we have to know that exceptional driving is more than just knowing where the controls are on our car, where to go with your left or your right foot when you brake, or possibly learning what the signs are about. To you, truly, it's an art to learn how to defensively drive. Explain that.
Well, it's more of a strategy than an art. If you think of driving defensively and tactically as if you're playing chess, that's the easiest way to look at it. We teach here defensive tactics, but more importantly, as a clinical driving evaluator, I understand brain function. And most young drivers under the age of 25 have an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, which is what controls their impulses. And rather than acting and then thinking, we try to get them to think before they act. And that's the difficult part. So advanced planning, hazard recognition, avoidance of situations that might cause them to lose control, and visual awareness, situational awareness is a key element. And we, more than most schools that I've ever encountered, I'm also the executive vice president for the Driving School Association, so I oversee the regions in the U.S. and Canada for trade organizations, members of our group. More so in Colorado, we teach more tactical driving for young drivers and advanced planning than most of the schools I've encountered.
As you said, it's a strategy, it's techniques that you're learning. So obviously not all schools are teaching the same. What should we be asking ourselves when we're looking around at different places that can provide the training for ourselves as well as our kids?
Well, I like the fact that you said yourselves, because we do have adult remedial training programs. But what you should really look for, number one, you should look for a school who really seems to care rather than just giving you a laundry list when you call them up on the phone. You should look and see if they have a professional website, which enables you to do homework and study without being pressured to make a decision of whether or not you want to register your child. You should visit the school and see what type of facilities they have. We have our own classroom facilities here. Most schools either rent them or they have a small place, or they don't do classroom at all. A lot of them are opting for online, which is not a bad thing because they have to be state approved. But I think that physical classroom is probably the best approach. And we do things differently than most schools. But visit the school, see what the owner's credentials are. There is, I'm going to toot my own horn. I've been involved in this industry since 1973. I've got a lot of experience. And one of the reasons I formed my own school was because I visited all of the schools and I talked to the owners and I looked at their staff and I looked at their turnover rate for instructors. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to bite the bullet, open my own school, which is what I did 3 months after Melissa died. And it's important to me that the quality of the education is more important than the quantity of the students.
Another thing I know parents look at many times is they understand that classes can sometimes give them discounts through their insurance. Is that with every school or just particular?
Well, most insurance companies offer a discount for a lot of different things, good student grades. A driver education program, that should be the last on the list. One of our basic programs is $425, and frankly, that's less than the deductible on a car insurance. Right. It's kind of an added bonus. It's kind of icing on the cake. Most of the major companies offer it. Some have in-house discounts by taking some of their own programs, but we're on an equal playing field when it comes to discounts. We're just not on an equal playing field when it comes to quality of education.
Absolutely. Let's start with the beginning. When we decide to get in gear and ready for the road out there, is the permit program that you provide here, is that where most people start? Yeah,
they sure do. We have a graduated driver's licensing program in Colorado where different age groups have different requirements to get an instructional permit. If you're under 15 and a half but over 15, you must take a certified driver education program, which consists of 30 hours of classroom and at least 6 hours of behind the wheel instruction, and all our behind-the-wheel instruction is one-on-one, and that's an important element. 15 and a half to 16, there's a minor requirement. Matter of fact, I'm teaching the class tomorrow. It's called a 4-hour driver awareness class, and that's kind of bare bones. It's not a preparation class for the permit, but it will qualify you to take the written test, and we're state testers, so we offer it as part of the curriculum. 16 to 18, there is no driver ed requirements other than take a 25-question written test, get at least 20 correct, and then you can drive for that first year, log at least 50 hours of experience. 10 of it has to be at night, which is a drop in the bucket, and then you take a skills test after that year, which we also do. We do the driver's license testing here, and then you can get a driver's license. So it's not rocket science, and it's not that difficult.
Let me ask you, we as parents, do we need to be educated as well as far as the different regulations out there? I imagine they've changed since we went through the program, and not only that, but they're consistently changing. Do you provide some of that education as well for adults?
Yeah, we start with a parent orientation.
Okay.
And it doesn't involve the students, and that's a free orientation. But more importantly, there is a program that I've got involved with several years ago called Teen Smart. And what it offers, it's a cost-effective way of 8 to 10 hours of training on computer and in-car exercises for the parent and their child, which enables the parent to have a roadmap, so to speak. Most parents just say, okay, Johnny, take me to Walmart. They don't have it, and then if they make a mistake, they say, well, that's not good, don't do that again. Well, with Teen Smart, it gives you hands-on approach. It gives them real-time exercises on the computer, and it's very interesting, and the parents learn as well as the child. If you think about it, most people have gotten their driver's licenses in their early or late teens, and then they're not tested again. So when they become adults, they don't know the minutiae. They just said step on the brake rather than how hard or how soft. So that's where we take over. We really give them the elements to work with. What we find is that the parents suddenly get drawn into the educational process, and they become better drivers themselves. My staff is better drivers just being around the industry and being well trained.
Interesting. You were able to provide training not only using behind the wheel, but also virtual classrooms as well as one-on-one classrooms. Is it a little bit of each that really creates a successful plan for you?
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, there is no service that we do not provide. In other words, we provide every conceivable driver education program that's available. And we also go over and above in a lot of different things, too. Personal hands-on approach with our students to really design the program to fit the student rather than making the student fit the program. That's a real important element. But, you know, we have every conceivable thing from I deal also with learning disabilities through the school districts. We deal with the transition programs. So we have kids with ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, Asperger's syndrome, and high-functioning autistic kids coming through the program. We deal with different neurologists, physiatrists in town. We go all the way up to the senior market, where I specialize with dementia and Alzheimer's, and I am the moderator basically between the driver and the family. When you start broaching the issue of loss of independence, it takes a very careful approach to really convince that individual that maybe it's time to hang up the spurs. And so from teenagers all the way up to my oldest student was 102. And believe it or not, they drove like a 75-year-old, and they're still on the road. So you really can't, discriminate based on age. You have to be able to see from a performance standpoint how they're going to do. So we have remedial programs for seniors, which also give them an insurance discount. Right. We have educational programs for the parents, and all the way down to the teens and learning disabilities and spinal cord injuries, and all the gamut of what we do is amazing.
A wide gamut of experience you have come to from 1973. You yourself personally have trained over 15,000. I mean, that's a lot of people to learn from. I mean, that you're teaching out there as well. In your estimation, do you feel awareness can be taught, really? Because really that's what it boils down to, is the awareness out there of their surroundings?
It's interesting if you really think about it. The cars now are taking over the responsibility of the driving, all the way to parallel parking and radar systems and night vision windshields. You can train awareness, but it's very difficult because you're in such a comfortable environment, almost as if you're in a cocoon. People have temperature control, they have music going, or they have the radio going. What you can teach is space management, which is the key element, because the most common type of crash is front end to rear end, which if you think about that type of a crash, it's ridiculous. I mean, how do you run into the back end of another vehicle? Well, it's lack of space. And there's a psychological reason behind it. It's the follow the leader mentality we teach our children from the time that they're very young to when we put them in school. And space management is probably more important than awareness, because we're human, we're all going to be distracted. And if we have a space bubble, basically, or a Doppler radar, and we're the center, and we know where the thunderstorms are, and we have enough time between us and the thunderstorms. You know how you count the thunder crashes and the lightning? Well, if we have that, we can kind of compensate for any lack of awareness or lack of attention. And that's probably the key element, is the space.
Wow, it's a great way of explaining it. I know as a parent myself, I've put one through who has drove, and we've got some more coming up. Many times we as parents, we're kind of looking for the quickest way to get there. How do we get them behind the wheel as far as classes that are required versus, like you said, going up and above? How can we explain to parents why that is important, and what are some of those up and above defensive classes that you provide?
Well, I think the important thing is what's the hurry? As a parent, they get pressured by their kids because it's a peer group issue. They go, well, Johnny got his driver's permit. I want mine. And then what the parent does is that defers to the kid and says, okay, call the different schools. So patience is the key element. And then when they call the different schools, they don't know what questions to ask. And parents, we find, don't know what questions to ask. So we're finding kids are getting their driver's licenses later, which is interesting. But take your time. They've got to hold their permits for a full year. And as a driving tester, we found that just that change from 6 months to a year has made the passing rate go higher because they actually have more experience. But we also found that people falsify the logs, which is sad. So to the parents, take their time, do their education, visit the schools, and then the process starts slowly and builds. And what's incredibly important that I've found is that if we see the child in the first couple of months of their permit, right, we may not see them again until their driver's license exam. So we have, as company policy, have remedial training along the way where they take an hour and a half or an hour of follow-up training to see if the parent has kind of disrupted the flow of the defensive tactics and the space management issues that we've dealt with. And then the goal is not just to get a driver's license. The goal is to survive that first year, and then we find that the crash rate goes way, way down. If they get past that first year, and a lot of them are not. We lost 18,000 teenagers a year in car crashes, 18,000. And the biggest issue is distractibility. They don't pay attention. And so anyway, so take your time.
Take your time. Distractibility. We were distracted back in '73 when you first started. We had radios. We had 8-track players. Do we even have more now because we have iPhones? We have texting. Is that a big issue that is addressed in your class as well?
Yeah, the distracted. We deal with a system of driving called the Smith system. We do focus on distractibility, but you're not going to stop it. They're teens. There's camera monitoring systems that you can put in the vehicles. There's GPS monitoring. There's phone apps. But frankly, you can minimize it by educating the child, but you can't stop it. And that's the unfortunate thing. So that first year of training is very, very important in order for us to get them through that first danger zone. And that's that first year.
So that first year of training is important, as well as that first year they're on the road.
Yep.
Like you said, once you get past those milestones, you're giving them a leg up so they can continue to drive safely.
Well, one important element that we've found, and I give this advice to parents if the child passes their driver's license exam, I say, okay, for the next 30 to 60 days, you are not to drive with this individual. You have to break that bond, that co-pilot dependence that the child may not realize that they have for their parents, and the parents don't realize that they've been doing a lot of the driving verbally, with the fingerprints in the dashboard and hanging on to the overhead. So when we tell them and they go, "Oh my God," I say, "Well, if you have reservations, then why are they here to take a driver's license exam? Because it's not really that difficult to pass it." So when you're going to take them just because a year is up doesn't necessarily mean that they have the experience to pass the test. They may pass the test, but are they prepared to drive completely solo? Can you sit in the vehicle as a passenger and not worry about what the driver is doing? If you have that anxiety, maybe, number one, either you're a lousy passenger or you are feeling something that you have not been able to correct. Even if you want to take an assessment lesson with a professional, take an hour and a half and find out what those elements are that you may be overlooking. But it's a comfort factor. When I was doing driver's ed in New York State, we were told that, would you put this student in with your own mother in the car? Would you feel that safe? And the average number of hours of training we used to do back then was 12 to 15 hours. Here they have this 6-hour training in their head. And very frankly, that's usually not enough. We offer 6, 12, 18 hours of behind-the-wheel training as well as the 30 hours of classroom. So
Very interesting, Tom. Viewers, take a look at the bottom of the screen right there. What you're going to see is their website. First of all, on the website, you're going to take a look at all the different services they provide for you there. They've got driver's ed, they've got classes. We're talking about one-on-one right here in the facility here. They are Colorado State approved as a testing facility here. You can also take a look at quite a bit of information and links they have out there to help you keep apprised of what's going on. A lot of the regulations and the questions and facts they have there as well. Lastly, before we let you go, this was something that you began, and it sounds like all the way through you kind of fought it along the way to get involved in this industry, and something kept pulling you back in. Now you are able to provide, it turned from a career really to a crusade. That you've done for your daughter, and is this something that you feel you will continue to do so in the future?
Okay. Yeah, I probably will. I'm over 60 now, which surprises some people, not me. And I'll do it as long as I can. It's a legacy. I have two grandsons. Tyler just turned 18. TJ, the younger one, who was 2 years old at the time of his mom's passing. I hope that one of them maybe follows in my footsteps and takes over the school, in not only for their mom's memory, but also for the legacy that I've kind of established for them. But hey, we'll see what happens.
Wonderful. Last time, viewers, take a look at the bottom of the screen. You're going to see their contact information right there as well. Give them a call. Check it out there. They've got classes. And remember, this is basically keeping you safe out there, not only for yourself, but safety for those that are on the highway as well. And remember, it's Driver Safety Consultants, where safety is our middle name. This is Gary Atensi with CNTV. And if you don't know, now you know.